Hello, my name is Thomas Rubino, King and Queen County. There's a couple of things I would just like to clarify before I start. One of them I'd like to address to Mr. Kyle Winter. There's a quote from something that you said earlier. You said that all of the facilities control exactly what goes into their plant. In regard to Rock 10, my understanding, my wife used to be an auditor for Chesapeake Corporation, so she was real familiar with what went into Rock 10 and how you could audit this stuff and what was in all of this material. And what she brought to my attention was this, that the way Rock 10 operates is they take corrugated cardboard and recycle it. The corrugated cardboard comes to the facility in giant bales that are shipped to them off the site. Some of them come, I believe this is true, from out-of-country locations. They come by the thousands. They arrive at the facility. No one has a clue what's in those bales. Those bales are not known to have, they have no idea what's in the bales. It's a guess that it's all corrugated, but there's no way to know what's in those bales. Those bales are not tested. Kyle, maybe you could help me understand the conflict of what I'm saying and what you said earlier. No comment, all right. And there's another thing I'd like to just verify, that there was a statement by the representative that that every load that goes out is tested. I don't believe that's true either. I don't believe every load that gets dumped on the ground is tested. Maybe we could clarify that point as well. Okay, so I'll start. My name is Thomas Rubino. I live in King and Queen County. I'm opposed to the permit. My study is limited to Rock 10 because of my time restrictions. Many pollutants are listed in the Rock 10 permit. Some of the questions here were what's in it. This is what I found. You just read the permit. This is what's in it. It includes radioactive agents, alpha, beta, radium, and radium-226. It also includes heavy metals, boron, cobalt, molybdenum, titanium, beryllium, copper, nickel, zinc, phenols, and arsenic. Cross-referencing the listed materials with the American Cancer Society's list of known human carcinogens shows that arsenic, cadmium, chromium, benzene, and vinyl chloride are all cancer-causing ingredients listed in the sludge. This permit would dump this toxic sludge 100 feet from our drinking water wells and 100 feet from our spring heads. We cannot permit the pollution of our wells, aquifers, and drinking water. We have lined landfills statewide to safely and successfully dispose of industrial sludge. We've been doing that for decades. This proposed permit stands in violation of 4 Virginia codes. Section 62-144-15-5B states, quote, domestic and other existing beneficial uses shall be considered the highest priority uses. From 62-111F, an excerpt, protect public water supplies for human consumption. 62-1-254, or excuse me, 254, protect the groundwater to ensure the public welfare, safety, and health. Code 62-110B, perhaps the most clear and irreferable reference to this issue. Public water supply issues for human consumption shall be considered the highest priority. So they've gone down the list. They quoted some things from 62-110, 62-15-2, which are further down the stipulations, but the stipulations already defied this application. You first have to protect human water supply in 4 different statutes. The Water Control Board has been issued a DEQ summary listing these legislative requirements without one word of explanation regarding the impact they should have on your consideration of the permit. Instead, the DEQ summary lists another code, inferring that the 4 state codes above are null and void. Do not be misled. The Virginia codes listed above explicitly require the Water Control Board to prioritize all water permits. Protection of drinking water for human consumption must prevail above all other uses of this irreplaceable resource. Spreading radioactive materials, heavy metals, and known human carcinogens onto the ground 100 feet from active spring heads and 100 feet from drinking water wells cannot stand the restrictions of the above listed state codes. Like many of us here today, I have taken my drinking water from shallow curbed wells for nearly 4 decades. And these were 3 different wells. There are hundreds of shallow water wells at risk from this single permit. These porous wells are made of sections of cement pipe. Could we see the illustration, Cindy? They're made of sections of cement pipe about 3 feet in diameter, and each section is 2 feet deep. So this would be the one that just says well, or well one, something like that. A hole is dug, and the first curb is set on the bottom of the hole. Each successive pipe is placed on top of the lower section. The bottom of my well, typical of these hundreds of wells, not that one, we'll look at that one in a bit, but the one with keep going, please. That's it. So we've all seen those wells. Those are very common throughout the Virginia countryside. I'll get off my subject for a moment. No, I won't keep going. These porous wells are made of sections of cement pipe about 3 feet in diameter. Each section is 2 feet deep. A hole is dug, and the first curb is set on the bottom of the hole. Okay, the one with the hand in it. Each successive pipe is placed on top of the lower section. So that's what the seam looks like between one pipe and the next. You can see it's porous, it's open so that the water can get into the well. This is how these things are designed to bring in the water. The bottom of my well, typical of wells, is 52 feet deep. It holds 12 feet of clean, clear water. The joints between the cement pipes are theoretically sealed at the upper elevations, but almost all of the older wells in use today are left unsealed top to bottom. Surface water can enter through every seam 2 feet apart from the top to the bottom of an unsealed well. As typical of most curb wells, they provide clean, clear drinking water most of the time, but when heavy rains come, surface water enters many of these wells from depths closer to the surface grade for a week or so before the water turns back to its normal clear condition. The following sentence is the most important fact to consider. This really matters. After a heavy rain, it takes 24 hours for muddy surface water to enter my well. So the surface water pollution must be coming from a distant source. How does the rainwater enter my well? My well's been tested free of coliform bacteria, so surface pollution cannot be coming from a septic system. My well is the highest structure around for a mile, so water does not run downhill into my well. Experts say the aquifer moves from 3 to 15 miles an hour. It takes 24 hours for the water to reach my well. If they dump industrial sludge 100 feet in my well, or even 500 feet from my well, I am likely to be drinking radioactive material, heavy metals, and known human carcinogens after the next big rain. This proves that a random 100-foot buffer cannot possibly protect my well from surface pollution. The DEQ's water supply, you can go to the next slide, which is the black and white one. The DEQ's Water Supply Planning Report 2013. And that's good for now. The Water Supply Planning Report 2013, which is the latest study at the DEQ for water supply, states that, quote, currently, the absence of accurate wellhead location requirements means that thousands of residential wells drilled annually have no readily usable spatial representation. Consequently, there is no efficient way of effectively analyzing the local geologic controls on these systems. And further in the study, no comprehensive analysis of springs has been undertaken in the Commonwealth since 1930. Does the DEQ does not possess even the most basic tools needed to address this issue of well pollution. No analysis of wells whatsoever has been attempted, just random 100-foot setbacks to all wells. The DEQ has failed to provide fundamental due diligence in attempting to satisfy these permit requests. I asked the DEQ some specific questions, hoping that these studies had been made and they would make some sense of this. Well, first question was, and I'll make it, does the DEQ use different setbacks between permitted pollution surface applications for shallow wells, such as I'm describing, versus deep solid pipe wells? The answer is no. Does the DEQ plan their pollution setbacks differently based on well depths to potable water? The answer is no. Does the DEQ plan the pollution setbacks based on which wells are made of porous cement curbs? The answer is no. Does DEQ have on record which shallow wells become muddy from surface water after significant rains? The answer is no. Does the DEQ tailor permit setbacks on the flow direction rate of the subterranean groundwater? which feeds the wells? The answer is no. The DEQ responded to my email that there have been no exceptions to the random well setback at all in 16,000 acres. It appears the DEQ expects the landowners to conduct their own personal well assessments and report their findings to the DEQ. Not one landowner has done that. It's not the responsibility of the public to protect themselves from the DEQ. It's the responsibility of the DEQ to protect our drinking water. Under the premise that spreading cost-free nitrogen on the ground surface is good for farmers, we're putting our drinking water at risk with radioactive materials, heavy metal, ammonium, and carcinogens. This permit is out of control. Please deny the permit. We have a workable system in place that has safely disposed of these dangerous pollutants for decades. Continue to secure these dangerous pollutants in our lined landfills and our qualified incinerators. These facilities work. That's why we built them. Use them, as we have for decades. There are outstanding legal biases written into this permit. 5 years of record-keeping for a 10-year permit. This is Part 1C1. I'd like to know who came up with this as a permit regulation. This is, it's specified, you see it in my notes. It specifies that all records of biosolid activities, monitoring, and reporting shall be maintained for at least 5 years. So, human carcinogens take decades to sicken their victims. These legal cases take decades to develop. The above stipulation for a 5-year record keeping for a 10-year permit is medically unethical, scientifically inept, and legally suspicious. It shows bias for Synagro and against the citizens of Virginia. If the Commonwealth permits this foolish pollution of our drinking water, at least require the polluters to keep records in perpetuity so our scientists can study the damaging effects and our grandchildren can establish who is responsible and culpable for the pollution-borne illnesses. Now we've seen, can we go to the next slide? Is this a laser pointer?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, go to the next slide. Lincoln. So, the earlier slide, can you all hear me okay if I stand here? The earlier slide that I had up was the DEQ explanation for how the aquifers exist in the state. What I did was I took those, this doesn't show up there, so I'll come back. I took those drawings and made it specific to something that's scaled for the wells. So those are 3 wells at different depths. Those are dug wells. It's not to scale, but you can see that each of the 2-foot increments in places where water would enter it. You can see the superficial aquifer. Obviously, the handwritten stuff is mine. The stuff that's not handwritten is DEQ. But it's consistent with DEQ. I'm not violating the drawing. I'm showing them an application to it. You can see the sludge in red at the top. You can see what is called the surficial aquifer, which is the top layer aquifer, and it shows DEQ's arrows show the material going down through those aquifers. They're going to, of course, end up in the well. Where else can they end up? Then you have the first layer of clay, and then you have another aquifer. The well to my right shows a shallow water well taking from that aquifer, and then another aquifer lower than that goes by what is locally called blue marl, or that clay, the second clay layer. So you're going to have these materials that are going to be leaking down into the aquifer and into the wells as sure as there's gravity. Now let me address something that I think is remarkably, it may look good on paper, but trust me, it doesn't work this way. I'm a boat builder, and in the last 3 years I've cast some metals. I've cast lead, tin, molybdenum, copper, zinc, etc. The lead alone, I've cast 16,000 pounds of lead in boat keels as long as this counter. Trust me, I understand how these things work in the real world. Here's the queer thing about lead. It weighs 700 pounds a cubic foot. 700 pounds. Water weighs 64. Lead is 700 pounds. Now, if you have a chart that says you're allowed 370 pounds per acre of lead, yeah, that looks great on paper. But if you put this into an evaporative pool for 2 years, I guarantee you the lead's at the bottom. Lead's a queer material. When you have molten lead, if you throw a 20-pound sledgehammer on molten lead, it floats. Rocks float on molten lead. It's so heavy it goes to the bottom of everything. If you have heavy material like lead, I don't know what the weights are for the radioactives, my guess are heavier yet. And you take a typical operation where you take sludge and put it in the back of a truck, transport it and dump it, there's going to be a